to see an apparition while aboard a plane, because that's something that you don't really hear too much about. It's usually the creepy buildings and graveyards that you think of when you think of ghosts or apparitions. So good question, Ryan. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so definitely, and to answer his question about at the end there about are ghosts attached to things? Yes, definitely. I mean, you can ask Robert the doll about that. He'll tell you all about that.
Yeah, and we love you, Robert. Just throwing that out there.
That's why we talk about you all the time.
Love you.
I'm still worried that 2020 is because somebody upset me.
Yeah, no kidding. Who did it? Let's find them now.
Write your apology letter. Come on.
Yeah, maybe we all should, just to cover the bases here. I don't know.
If any of us accidentally said something wrong.
So. Yeah, no kidding. Well, Mark, if you would like to, share one of these new tales that we have yet to hear.
Well, I told it a little bit on our last appearance with you because we were teasing it for Eerie Appalachia.
Yep.
We were down in the Everglades area, and we were researching a creature called the Squallies. And the Squallies are pig-headed little men. They seem to be kind of tribal. They carry spears. They wear like loincloths. It's very bizarre. The sightings of them range from the late 40s to the early 60s. And they're seen all over the place, usually one or two. Sometimes there's a couple sightings where there's like 5 or 6 of them, and they're on these little roads the service roads that go through the Everglades. They're never on a main drag. So they are out in the middle of nowhere. Hi, Pajamas. How are you? So
there's Pajamas.
Yeah, he's coming out. So,
hey, buddy.
He heard us talk about pigs, and he was like, "Ooh, I could eat a pig."
Yeah, sounds delicious.
Yeah, anyway, so we're researching these squallies, and I'm talking with a couple witnesses who are now getting up there and are, I'm worried they're gonna pass away on me, so we're like racing to get interviews with them and stuff like that on tape, and while we're there, we're just jotting down information and everything, and I'm getting the time period and I'm getting everything down, and one of them talks about the Crestview sighting, that they had a friend who saw the Crestview sighting at the Crestview Elementary in Miami. And I'm like, I never really looked into that one that much because it was kind of a debunked sighting because everybody just said it was helicopters. And then I realized, no, that was what the cover story was, and that's what everybody said. And now the lid is blowing off of Crestview. So suddenly Squallies got kind of put on a back burner, that they were military experiments that had gone wrong. There was all these stories behind them. So I've got some interviews still on that, and we're excited to delve more into that because Carrie wants to draw them so bad. And they may tie into a thing further north called the Seminole Boar Man, who's a guy with a pig head, and he's giant, and he was seen in the 80s and 90s.
How giant was he?
Like 8 foot, 7 or 8 foot.
No.
So now we're like, sheep squatch area type thing,
yep.
With a big head. And now we're like, could it be the Squallies have grown up 40 years on? Maybe that's how big they get. So we were following that, but then Crestview Trail just kept pulling to me. So I was like, all right, I got to go look into Crestview a little more. And I reached out and found the, you grew up in Crestview which has always been one of our favorite things to do on Facebook, is reach into the actual places where these things happened and see if we can talk to witnesses. And we've found dozens of witnesses. Now, for those who don't know the Crestview incident, basically a bunch of kids at a school and teachers see craft come down. Now, it starts with a young boy who's out on recess at Crestview Elementary, and he's looking out up in the sky, sees this thing kind of spinning a disc, classic disc, doesn't know what to do with it. And he's just looking at it going, interesting. And then his recess is over, and his teacher's like, come in. And he's like, what's that? So the teacher comes out and looks at it, and he can't figure it out. And they're like, wow, that's crazy. And then it just disappears super fast, blink of an eye. So they go in, nothing of it. But the next day, everybody's talking about, what did Jimmy see? That was crazy. He told everybody. And it came back. and it brought friends. The next day, right as school starting, it shows up right across, a lot closer, like right across the street, with tons of 4 little craft that resemble what we would call tic tac shapes now. Back then, it didn't really fit the UFO narrative, so they just called them unusual things. But the main craft was more of the classic disc shape with like a turret top. And then these things were doing little maneuvers all around it, like drones or something. And now this is 1962, I believe. Let me pull up my notes real quick. Just 1967. Sorry. Yes, because our time.
All right. The dates are always, I'm the same way. It's a lot in your head.
62 was Squallies, the last Squally sighting. That's why I was thinking that. So, but 67, we start looking into this, and we're going, what the heck is going on with this? And then so the things are flying around, and then they disappear into the trees without hurting the trees, like they flew in through a portal. And the kids are all like, oh, and the teachers are all like, oh. And then the big one comes back, like just reappears, does a few more light show things, and then disappears into the sky. The military show up about an hour later. They're not too far from a couple military bases, and start interviewing everybody, and particularly select ones that saw more than the others. And then one of the kids says, oh, it looked like a bunch of helicopters. Yeah, they hovered like helicopters. So that became the story. It was helicopters. And so the newspaper next day, UFOs were helicopters. And so everybody forgets about it, thinks, oh, it was just helicopters on maneuvers. And thankfully, with these last few years, with the Navy declassifying, and then every show on television now on the Travel Channel and the History Channel talking UFOs and ghosts, these people who saw this back then are coming out going, did anybody else think that wasn't helicopters and all that? And sure enough, everybody's speaking up about it now, because now these were kids back then, so they're still, some of them are still fairly young, so it's been nice to talk to them, so and then we got to one in particular, and we went to, now he's kind of a big wig in town, so we can't name him, or name drop him, but let's just say he has a public office down there. And so he's still 100% wants this told, but he can't say who he is. But he was interviewed at home by the military and government man. So a government man that his father told him. And now what was interesting about that is he had the paper of the names of the men that had interviewed him. His dad had written it down, and he still had that paper. And what was cool was we got to see the names. And one was a captain that had a very common name. So that one kind of is a dead end. We're still reaching out, trying to find which captain that might have been, maybe a family member, who knows. And then the other one was a Coast Guard, and he had another name, and again, kind of common, like Sinclair. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's not common, but definitely not uncommon. It's going to be tricky to track down records for that. But then the government man's name jumped out at me, and it just said one word: Cold. And that, for those of us in the UFO field, on the trail of UFOs and everything else, the name Cold has a whole different meaning for us, especially in 1967. This would have been 6 months after the Derenberger incident in 66 in West Virginia, where a guy named Derenberger is driving along an interstate outside of West Virginia, and he gets pulled over by a UFO, basically, and talks to a very smiling, strange man named Indrid Cold, who is standing in front of a UFO, talks to him about his home planet, and wants to know about our planet and all this. It's a crazy story, and it haunts this guy for years. It's intrigued everyone since. Indrid Cold's been spotted numerous places throughout the years. He famously, supposedly called John Keel while he was researching the Mothman incident. Cold is one of those boogeyman names for us. And the fact that he was there talking to someone about a UFO incident shortly after, the government man may have been Indrid working with the government, or for the government, or somehow. And the kid just remembered him being crazy, crazy looking and smiling all the time. So now we are super excited, and that led us on the trail back to West Virginia, and that became the early parts of Eerie, Appalachia. So if anybody else remembers being interviewed by a government man, in that area, we would more than happy to talk to you if you want to give us an email at mark@eerieflorida.com. So.
Yes, everybody, please reach out, because this is actually, as you said, for those of us in the know, this is a huge, huge development and a huge story. So
This is
awesome.
This is the smoking gun.
Yeah, big time. Mark, we've got a quick question here.